All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the West Sussex Milwaukee School Board to order. Ms. Carr, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Is that would you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Steele. Here. Mr. Sickich.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Carr.
Here.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Present.
Mrs. Lee. Here. Mrs. Kaiser's excused. President Lee.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do you have any modifications to the agenda this evening?
There are no modifications.
All right, we'll move right into the superintendent's report.
All right. Good evening. We do have a short report tonight. Legislative updates. Joint Finance Committee approved reading curriculum under the state's new law despite DPI concerns. So currently there's a bit of an undercurrent as far as communication and disagreement concerning the recommendations from this committee specifically and the alignment with DPI. So as they work out their differences, we of note, none of the recommendations are required. The only thing that is required is that each of the adoptions that districts choose to use meet the specific guidelines set forward by DPI. DPI proposes changes to start date. So DPI proposed changes to the school start date rule that governs the issuance of start date waivers. The purpose is to provide more clear guidance and flexibility for districts when applying for a waiver, and that's the start of school date. Prior to Labor Day is always a sacred day for not to start school. So that is what that is directly pertaining to. Educational bills that are dead for this session. There are a total of 25 bills that may have only passed one chamber in the state legislature. So those are 25 bills that are currently dead. Governor Evers did sign Senate Bill 990 and the amendments into law. This law delays implementation of the screener requirements under Act 20 until January of 2025. Tonight, we have a special faces video for Mr. Jerome Wardlow. He is a special education teacher at Central High School, and we're going to play a bit of it. I won't not play the whole thing. Currently, it's the video that's had the most views for us over this period of time that we've had our Faces series, and so we can tell that it's getting a lot more attention, which is a great thing. We want that kind of attention. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Hahn. This is Jerome Wardlow.
Students have like very similar needs to what I had when I was a student. Like they just need somebody that's going to be like personable. Students have like very similar needs to what I had when I was a student. Like they just need somebody that's going to be like personable, approachable, when they have someone that like they can relate to. And just for me, that's what I always envision myself doing as a teacher. My name is Jerome Wardlow. I'm a special education teacher at West Sussex Central.
The passion that Jerome brings every single day is his ability to build relationships with kids, and he's amazing at these individual relationships beyond just surface level, beyond just good morning. His ability to connect with kids individually and know things about kids individually. You can ask any of his students what they think about Mr. Wardlow, and they'll put a smile on.
The energy Jerome brings, you can very much see in the hallways. He's constantly, he name drops the kids all the time. So like, a kid will walk past and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's energetic, and like he allows the students to connect with him on a personal level. So like they're always Mr. Wardlow, and they're always like goofing around, like he'll say something and they'll clap back and he claps back, and they have such a friendly relationship, but also like one of mutual respect.
He's a very good teacher. I really like how he explains things. Like the way he puts it out there is not as if like it's a rude way, but he makes it seem like it's a demand and also a choice at the same time. You know what I mean? So his figurative language is also very it's very polite. You know what I mean? Like the way he throws hyperboles in and like just other things together is easy, and he makes it easy to understand.
I think that's a big part of like being an educator is like you work directly with students every single day, and it's not just like a group of certain students. Like you're accessible to everyone, and just like even like the students that I don't have in class, like they have friends that have been, and just like being able to build those relationships. Like right now, like I'm taking a lot of time out with the freshmen because there's a possibility that I'll have them as sophomores. So it's just a lot easier to do some of that like front loading with them as
into our
fresh students
websites,
have like very
our
similar
social
needs
media
to what I
pages,
had when I
and
was a student.
watch the video. We believe that it really depicts the true essence of our district, the people, and what makes our district so great. Shout outs. So our music department, there's a message that, and you'll see it on the screen, that recognizes all of the individual student and group state qualifiers. And so this list is, I will tell you this is what I'm going to do for schools. Let me highlight the schools. That'll be the easiest way to do this. 146 medals from Central High School. 260 medals from Nathan Hale. FLW, 260 medals. West Milwaukee, 58. And that's a district total medal count of 724 medals. And that breakdown is 572 gold, 130 silver, and 22 bronze, equaling that total of 724. So a special shout out to all of our music teachers who participated in the Wisconsin School Music Association sanctioned district solo and ensemble music festival. So great job, students, and congratulations to our teachers as well. We also have another individual list that we will have on our website, and it's a lot of kids. I would sit here and call out each one of you as much as I really want to do that. I'm not gonna lie to you, but we will have it for viewing for our community. So if you see one of these students on our list for individual student and group state qualifiers, please give them a special shout out. We're so proud of you. And our music department is outstanding, attending all of the concerts, not only the orchestra as well as the choir, to see the crowd cheering our students on is a truly sight to see. When you pull up to Central and you don't have a parking spot and you have to park all the way down Lincoln, that's a great problem to have in the sense where you know it's a lot of people in here. So thank you to our community for coming out and supporting these events as well. Dr. Robinson? Sure.
May I ask a question? Do we know how many kids were involved from our district in the music contest?
I do not have the total number involved, but I would definitely get that to you.
That's, I mean, it's sure not that critical if you move it.
Pat might know the answer.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this here.
Yeah.
She's right there.
You know?
We'll come back to you. Okay? All right. Our Future Chefs events. The Future Chefs competition was a great showcase of student culinary talent and creativity. Thank you to everyone that took the time to develop and submit the best their recipes, to the student finalists and their families for participating, and to guest judges who came to support. We also want to send a special shout out to Helen, who works in our business department, as well as Sodexo and their team for assisting us in pulling out this event. This is my second time participating. Someone reminded me this was your initial event last year. So it's always a great time to come out and then to have the opportunity to taste the food that the students presented was definitely a thrill. All right. So just a few visits, board member campus walks, Walker and Pershing, those schools, I've walked those schools with a couple of board members. School visits, Irving Central, West Milwaukee, Frank Lloyd Wright, and Forest Man, specifically from the last time we met. We participated in city schools meeting with Mayor Devine and Village President Stileski. Quadrant B superintendent's meeting. Future Chef event, Doc, you just mentioned that, our all city choir performance. I viewed that not only as a superintendent, but as a proud dad. So that was great to just be a part of that. And professional development meetings with our school. We're currently working on our PD tool, where we want to have an inventory of possible trainings available for our staff, both asynchronous and synchronous, where they can register for those trainings and at the same time keep a record of what the training participation and completions are. We think it would be a better way of organizing things and keeping professional development at the forefront of what we do in our district. Gifted and talented, we also had a meeting concerning our depth and complexity trainings that will be launching this summer. And then we had a meeting with Global Educational Concepts. It's a foreign teachers agency. We're looking at foreign teachers specifically for special education, as well as world culture courses. And these are some hard to staff positions. So we're trying to prepare for them and making sure we have those things covered. That closes out the superintendent's report. Turn it back over to you, Sue.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7, which are public comments for this evening. There's no one currently signed up for public comments. There's anyone here in the room or in Zoom who would like to address the board. If you're in the room, there's a tablet in the back where you can sign up. If you're in Zoom, there's a link in the chat to be able to address the board. I'll wait my 15-second time frame to see if anyone wants to address the board this evening. All right, not seeing anyone signed up. We're going to close public comments. We'll move on to item 8, or board reports, starting 8.1, review of board calendar. Today is the 25th of March, 6 p.m. We regular Board of Education meeting. Then we have a college career readiness workshop, transitional education center redesign. Then on Monday, April 8th at 6 p.m. we have regular Board of Education meeting. And then we have a financial stability and efficiency workshop, proposed 24-25 budget input rate tax levy number 1. Immediately following, we have a closed session. And then on Monday, April 15th at 6 p.m. we have our second school showcases, our last school showcases, I should say. We have Franklin Elementary, Irving Elementary, Jefferson Elementary, West Milwaukee Intermediate, Frank Lloyd Wright Intermediate, and Central High School. Then Monday, April 22nd at 6 p.m. we have our regular Board of Education meeting. And then we have 2 workshops, referendum on referendum 2024, workshop number 4, and student voice and student representatives on our board. Moving to 8.2, our board committee report, starting with 8.2.1. This Kaiser is here, so Mr. Burns, giving that report. All right.
Yep, I'm giving the board report tonight. So our financial stability group met on March 18th, and we were discussing our preliminary budget for the 24-25 school year. And our next budget meeting, as you mentioned, is coming up, and it will be our first glance at our preliminary tax levy and the mill rate for 24-25. And we're also really happy to report that our budget currently, as it stands, is within a few $1,000s of being balanced. So we are in a really good place compared to where I think I've seen us in the last few years at this point in the year. We also discussed the CPI, which dictates our raises, and our consumer price index, and that in 2023 finished at 4.12%. And right now our preliminary budget has us eyeing hopefully 5% for our district, and we're looking for full board approval for all employee groups at the April. And we're hoping that this will support our ongoing efforts to keep our staff. Those were our big ticket items that we discussed. We also discussed how some of the other items that with our budget being where it is, if there's money, we may look at some other avenues to help with teachers and staff in aiding their work-life balance and just making it life easier at school.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Burns. Any questions, Mr. Burns, regarding his report? Or any items to consider for future agenda? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Burns. Move on to 8.2.2, Recreation Community Services, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. The rec committee met last Monday on the 18th, and you'll never guess what we discussed. It was the strategic plan. what we worked on this time was moving on from the initial meetings with the large group. Uh, uh, Shelley Strasser spoke with us about having 3 groups meeting as small groups. We've got 3 community members. One is actually a district employee. The other 2 are from the community though. One is going to be a facilities team. Pretty obvious the focus there. One is a connectivity team. That's going to be just the progress, the flow from one level from elementary to middle to high school. I've touched on that before. The other one's going to be an engagement team. That'll be focused on finding ways to engage parents, community, and just driving more participation in general. The ask of those groups is to bring a few issues that we're trying to solve, some ideas for how to solve those things. That's going to go into the draft of the strategic plan. We set some aggressive timelines for completion of the draft, end of the school year. And we're looking for a final draft of July 1st. We really want to try to push it not as a mandate, but really just a goal, something that's in place for the fall. So we don't want to let it die on the vine, so to speak. We want to get it done, move it forward. That's about all we really discussed.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Any questions for Mr. Becker regarding his report? Or any suggestions for future agenda items? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Becker. We'll move on to 8.3, our board member reports of community events. Anyone attend any events over the last week or 2 that they would like to report back on? Ms. Steele?
Oh, just so you know, Mr. Pickage, it's about 500 musicians that participated. Saw an email from Mary Pat. I just wanted to say, so I was able to go and visit, I did a tour of Walker Elementary the last week. And it was just really, it was really nice experience. Just got to see the learning that was going on there. I think it's a very interesting school to visit because they do have larger classrooms. So like my daughter's classroom there's like 64 students to 3 teachers. And I think people hear that and they're like, but it's really interesting to watch how they break out into their groups. And it's like 20. And just like, it's just the transition is just really smooth. So I just was really impressed with how far the school has come, went from 250 kids to 390. And the staff is I was very impressed with everything that was going on there and just the level of organization. And I know it's got to be tough trying to figure out all those recesses and lunches and all that with so many kiddos, and they're doing a good job over there. And then I just wanted to mention, I was very excited to be a judge this year at Sodexo's Future Chefs Challenge. I got to be in place of Miss Kaiser. Unfortunately, was sick, but I was more than willing to do it. And it was just, I was really blown away just by the talent of our students. We're talking about 9 and 10-year-olds, and their recipes were just really good. It was really hard to decide which one was the best. I mean, we were really like getting down to the nitty-gritty. So congratulations to all of those students that participated, and to all the students that actually sent in a recipe. So got some really good chefs coming up.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Steele. Anyone else like to report on events they attended over the past few weeks? Mr. Becker?
I had a nice walk through Pershing Elementary with Dr. Robinson and really enjoyed seeing some of our kindergarten classrooms. I think the highlight there was one of our teachers shared it was one of the best groups that she'd had and maybe ever. She really enjoyed that there was a small classroom size, just a bunch of really well-behaved kids. And another point of emphasis was that it was kind of a reintegration of science into the programming. So in addition to just focus on reading and math, we're also really starting to focus more on science again. We saw a nice activity with kids. They were buzzing. They were running around as bees. So that was a nice bit of just learning how it works, kind of making it a little bit more of a kinesthetic activity where we're introducing some motion and also teaching the concept, and it was enjoyable to see. I didn't dance with the kids in the music class.
They missed out.
No, they didn't.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Anyone else want to report on any events they attended? All right, so last but not least, so I also was I've been lucky enough the last few years to be asked to be a judge for Future Chefs. So I've been able to kind of see each year, the students and the types of recipes that they come up with. And, it's always exciting to kind of see what they settle on, what they pick. And kind of the breadth of, from snack, something that's like, would be like a snack to something that could be an actual meal, that that bring forth, and where they're getting it from. Some of them are like family recipes that they're bringing in, and other ones are things that they just enjoyed. So I always thank Steve Kaiser and his team for putting that together. I think it is exciting thing for the elementary students to be a part of. And I've been picking at for years now to continue this into our intermediate schools, because they get this wonderful opportunity as elementary kids, and then it just kind of goes away. And so I really think it'd be great to continue it. Now that we have that kitchen at Gotke, I think we should make use of it. So he has promised me that there will be something coming up for intermediate students, so that those who maybe participated can continue that on and see some more complexity in their recipes that they're coming forward with. So a great event, and glad to see it continue here in our district. I was also able to join the West Milwaukee students for their Junior National Honor Society induction. So that this was the first year that they had done that since, I think, before COVID. I think 2019 was the last time that they had one. So there was, I guess, the biggest class of inductees that they've had since ever for West Milwaukee. And West Milwaukee is one of the oldest chapters of Junior National Honor Societies that we have here in Wisconsin. So it was a great program, a lot of excited kids. And so I was honored to be invited and happy to be able to attend. And then I also attended the All-City Choir concert. I also was attending as a board member and a dad. My daughter was also an elementary student there, but it's again a feat, I think, to be able to put that many kids in one space and get them to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. So I do give the staff a lot of credit for the work they put in to prepare the kids for that. They have one rehearsal where everyone comes together to be able to do they have two pieces that they perform together. And then, overall very well behaved as far as being able to sit when they're not supposed to be singing and listening to the other groups when it goes elementary, then intermediate, then high school, and then back to a full group thing. So a very good job there. And then the last two things I want to mention, this is more less to do with school district per se, but more to do with just civic responsibility. I also participated in a retirement party for 3 of the West Dallas outgoing older people who were retiring after many years of service to the city of West Dallas. And then I also was able to be a part of a moderation group that held a forum for the many candidates that are up for election. And so one thing that's a little different from us for school board, we have election of 3 people every single year. But for the common council in West Dallas, the mayor and the common councils all elected at once, and they're in for 4 years. So every 4 years is a really important election, local election here in West Dallas. And so I just wanted to, again, encourage everyone. We have an election coming up next week. Please vote. If you haven't voted already, April 2nd, that election will be held. There are a lot of candidates up. And if you're living in the city of West Dallas and listening to us right now, you're going to have to live with whoever you picked for the next 4 years. So I hope that you're doing your due diligence, and the recording of that forum is available for people who weren't able to attend it or view it live. All right, so with that, that's all the events that I attended over the last few weeks. And I don't have any additional events for 8.4. So move on to our consent agenda this evening. Starting with 9.1, approval of minutes from our regular Board of Education meeting on March 11th and our board workshop from March 18th. 9.2, our employment summary. 9.3 is summary contracts. And 9.4, our financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated out?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, that passes. Then move on to our action items this evening, starting at 10.1, authority for administrators to issue final non-renewal notices to teachers. Mr. Norris.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Filling in here on this item here for Mary Ann, who's out. So I just want to go through this. This is an annual item that comes to the board every year about this time. If you can kind of go back in February, the board approved prelim non-renewals and for administrators to proceed with staff who are on plans of improvement for final non-renewals. It requires board action. So with that, I would just pose any questions you may have.
Do you have a total of how many roles we're?
Yeah, at this point, there's 5 currently, and then potentially 2 more that they're still working through, the plans, so.
Any other questions from the board?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. And we'll move to 10.2 crossing guard contract extension. Mr. Norris,
Just me.
Mr. Norris, okay.
Yeah, it was spring break, so I called Connie and said, hey, you don't need to come tonight. I can enjoy your break. So I'm like, I'm coming anyway. I'm happy to answer the questions. So, yeah, so this is kind of our second round with RFPs for the year. It seems like it's an RFP year here. So, first was for transportation. Now we're here with crossing guard. So, earlier this fall, similar to transportation, we went to RFP for crossing guard services, which was coming due at the end of the year here. And so we received 2 different bids. One was from our current vendor, which is All City Management, and another one was from a company called CrossSafe out of Green Bay. All City Management, it's kind of like we discuss things like in finance, our committee, about like no news is good news, essentially, from the transportation crossing guard world. And so all things considered, in my opinion, having worked kind of with those 2 organizations for about 6 years now, it's a pretty well-oiled machine. So the bids came back. Not only was All City Management offering good service, but they were $60,000 cheaper over the life of the contract versus CrossSafe. So it's kind of interesting when, and I've talked with our team internally about how does inflation impact like companies? It really impacts people. And so like you see across the country, like small organizations, small businesses are impacted the most because it impacts the bottom line the most. So when you look at like transportation, we talked about too, that like there's very limited options. And 15 years ago, it was hundreds. Like health insurance, WA goes out of business, then Humana goes out of business, right? Your options get limited as inflationary costs rise. So I'm happy to report that I think this is the best option we have. It did come with a year 1 increase of 24%, but long term, low percent increases beyond that. So to me, yeah, All City Management is that's a great recommendation, I think, at this point for us. So I think I'll pause there for questions from the board.
Questions from the board about the contract? I'll just note that I like to see the longer amount of years. I know we try to, it's always my intent to try and lock in a price so that we know moving forward with lots of other things that are unknown, we can kind of plan like, well, how much that is going to cost for us. So I do appreciate the effort to get this many years in the contract for moving forward, so we have some more stability as far as that goes. Any other questions, or I look for a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Norris. All right, so that is the business portion of our meeting this evening. We'll move right into our workshop, the Transitional Education Center redesign. So we have a number of individuals that will probably need to get set up. Okay, so you okay, right, go ahead, Dr. Robinson. Next.
So we're excited tonight to sort of talk to you about the rebranding of our tech program, which is our alternative school within our district. And so we've been working over the last, I would say, 4 months to bring a product that you will understand, and as a community will also be clear about the direction that we're going in. But most importantly, to the board and to the community, we are really trying to move to being proactive versus reactive, and putting in things that will help students on the front end. And that includes a lot of counseling, a lot of restorative practices, but at the same time, not trying to just throw our kids out. We are really trying to work with them before sending them to tech. I want to start by saying that and lay it up with that particular message. We do have a couple of individuals who are going to lead the presentation, and I'll also kind of chime in from time to time with other feedback and information. So we have Laura Sage, who's going to present, as well as the head presenter tonight, is Mr. Melvin Vico Johnson. He is not a model. He works actually as our student connections. He's in here looking really cute tonight. And so I just thought I would best. He's clean now. He's we're just very excited to have them here tonight. And we also have some special guests. Mr. Montrell Wade, who's a youth advisor, Mr. Ryan Wilberger, who's our tech teacher, as well as Kane, who's a student who we'll hear from as well on this evening. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson. You're up.
Excellent. Well, I'll get us started here. So Mr. Wilberger and I started having conversations at the end of last school year in what things could look like to do a better job with our students and how to reconfigure. So that's when we kind of started the process. Dr. Robinson came in, had his visions of things that he wanted to put into that space. We then moved on to our team, Melvin Johnson, who is our manager of student connections. And from there, putting all of that together with his lead, absolutely, we have come a long way from where the tech program was as of last year. So I will turn it over to Melvin, and he will be your guide through the process this evening. And then I'll help guide some of the people that will be coming up and having conversations for the different aspects of the program.
All right, thank you, everyone. I didn't get the memo and wore a shirt, tie, and I did too much, and I apologize. I did too much. I did too. I'll agree, but yesterday was my anniversary, so I celebrated 18 years with my lovely wife. So I'm not going to tell you I wore this last night. But I want to present the Transitional Education Center and the work that we've been engaged in to kind of shift some of the work that we're doing, especially the student outcomes from the Transitional Education Center. Here's our pieces that we'll like to go over with you all, starting with, of course, I think everything that we do is derived from our strategic plan. We'll talk about who we are as a tech program, and then what this reimagining means for us. We'll talk about some of that proactive work that Dr. Robinson was talking about, that we've begun to engage with our youth advisors and kind of shifting their role within the comprehensive spaces. The development of our flow chart, which will kind of, it's an internal document and is developed for our secondary principals, but what it does is give us a step-by-step process of determining who are the students that will come to tech, for what duration they'll be here. It gives us the entire communication model that we'll use when making that determination. And then certainly what we did, and I think is critically important, is we added a system of checks and balance in the entire program. So we're moving the autonomy out of the hands of individuals to make those decisions. Has been a really strong effort on our part and has paid off dividends, I would say. We'll talk about the education plans that we develop with our students when they're with us, as well as some of the work that we're doing around social emotional development. Then we'll have a student testimony, Dr. Robinson alluded to, give you a sneak peek at some of the numbers. Again, what we've done this year is basically serving as baseline information for us, because this is our new start, right? This is our reimagining of tech. And like I said, this is just the beginning for us. And we'll talk about our commitment to making sure that we're providing the very best support and services for our students who experience school separation, but we're also making sure there's things in place for them to return, to be reintegrated into their spaces and not reoffend. So I think that's a real big piece of what we're doing. Give you all a program summary and why we believe we're at least on that right trajectory. And then certainly answer any questions for you all. Again, as you already know, the work that we engage derives directly from our strategic plan. Specifically, when we talk about an increase in self-regulation of our young people, as well as a reduction in exclusionary discipline incidents. And I know that might sound counterintuitive because we are serving students who are experiencing school separation for major infractions, but it is our belief and our contention that if we put the right supports in place for our students, if we're giving them the academic supports, the social emotional supports as well, then we won't see cases of recidivism occurring, and we don't see these kids reoffending at the high school and not seeing them come back to us. So we believe that is completely aligned with the strategic plan. And obviously, we believe the strategy around incorporating social emotional supports for our student, which I think has been a critical mainstay in the work that the teacher and the co-teacher in the classroom has done this year with our students. So I'll just say this right off the bat: I take no credit for the incredible work that has been occurring in that classroom with those young people. I will give that credit to Mr. Loberger and Mr. Sean Jenkins, who's not with us right now. And I believe they've done nothing short of been phenomenal in their work with our young people. And hopefully you'll see at the end, the numbers will bear out. We also, we contend that the work that we're engaging is completely aligned with the equity belief. And I'll just draw you to that first portion where it says that together we're all responsible for the prevention of unmet potential. And I'll just say this without getting on my soapbox. I believe that there are no students that are disposable in our district, right? Some students make some poor decisions in moments, but I believe by putting the supports in place and like the onus is on the adults to make sure that we are providing the supports for these young people. Sometimes that does require some school separation for a minute or what have you, and feeding into them and making sure that they have the skills to be able to address some of those antisocial behaviors that may have led to their school separation. But there are no students that I believe that are disposable. Recyclable, yes, but not disposable. And I like to see our tech center as a recycle center. So we are working on our students and we're restoring them and bringing them back to the Luxor. And hopefully they're able to go back to their comprehensive space and begin to work towards their full potential. So our alignment is directly connected to our equity beliefs as well. So who are we? But I will ask you to pay your attention to bring your attention to the phrase that you see at the top, and it says Kasarian and Gara. And my teacher mentor told me, anytime you're in front of people, never lose an opportunity to teach or to share something with them so that you can leave someone with something. And this Kasarian and Gara is derived from a Kiswahili term that is the regular greeting for the Maasai people that you'll find in Kenya. And Kasarian and Gara translates to how are the children, right? So as they greet each other on a day-to-day basis, the same way we will say, hey, how you doing, or what have you, their phrase is Kasarian and Gara, and that just means how are the children. And for me, it's important, and it serves as my North Star for our school district, because I believe that the work that we are engaging in, everything that you all come to these board meetings and are connecting with our schools and our principals and our superintendent is around providing the very best support for our kids. As a society, we can never be doing as well as our kids are doing. So we measure, at least for me, my North Star, I'll measure the way I'm doing and the work that we're doing by how well our students are doing. So Kasarian and Gara is that North Star for me, and I hope that you would look that phrase up and at some point even repeat it to someone else. So who are we? Obviously, and I don't want to go into you already know that we provide academic and social emotional support for our students who experience that school separation from major infractions that occur at the school, right? So we are that purgatory space, right? And I'll tell you this, and then I'm going off script, and I hate this, but I have to tell you, like, this is that critical moment for students when they're with us in the tech program. A student can decide that they're going to continue along this path towards education, or they can decide to go another direction. and not continue on with their education, right? All the statistics will tell you that students who experience multiple suspensions are less likely to graduate, right? I believe that our tech program serves as somewhat of an intensive care unit for our students, and we're providing the very best support that we can for those students to, one, make sure they know who they are, make sure that they understand their purpose, understand the value of education, and then we partner with them and their families to provide the very best academic and social emotional supports so that they can be reintegrated into their comprehensive spaces. That's who we are in a nutshell. Now, taking on the work of, I'll call it the reimagining of tech, we understand that there were some things, and we call them growth opportunities from previous years with the tech program. And a couple of those pieces are like working with our youth advisors, and I'll talk about that briefly, the intake process, educational service plans, the SEL development, and then lastly, we'll talk to one of our star students who made a phenomenal turnaround in the work that he's been able to do. But to begin with the youth advisors, and I have Montrell Wade with me right now, who is the youth advisor for Nathan Hale High School. Again, what we wanted to do with our youth advisors is that preventative sort of work, right? So we want to avoid students getting involved in issues, circumstances where they might have to experience these major exclusionary disciplinary actions. To that point, we had to sort of reshift the focus of how we're using our youth advisors. If you've ever been in a building prior, you may have seen a youth advisor looking more like a school safety, right? Like they're dealing with, they're monitoring those spaces, those large spaces, cafeteria in the morning when students are coming in and when students are leaving. That's still a part of their job, but we needed to make sure that the role also addresses some of those critical needs for our students around that social emotional support, anger management, conflict resolution, and those types of pieces. So being proactive in that case, we believe will reduce the amount of exclusionary disciplinary actions that are taken in those spaces. So I know I probably talk too much because I tend to do that. I'm gonna allow Mr. Wade to talk about the work that he does at Nathan Hale with this reimagining.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm Montrell Wade. I was the first youth advisor to come to West Dallas District. I started in 2016. And I've been to pretty much all the schools doing youth advisor in the middle schools and the high schools. The only one I haven't been at that I worked at was FLW. And I was supposed to stay at one school, but the need for like things that go on at the other schools when we didn't have the amount of youth advisor that we would typically want to have, just allowed me to be able to move around to different schools and just meet different kids and be able to work with all those different groups. When we started the youth advisor program, we started it as a common ground between teachers and students, a way to get students back in the classroom so that if students were having a problem with a teacher, we didn't have to bring them to admin or take them to a counselor. We want to just be able to work with the student and get them back in the classroom as soon as possible so that they can fully function in the room with the rest of the students. So sometimes that would take a restorative between the teacher and the student on a teacher's prep time or something like that. And then working on getting the student back in the classroom, they go back in and then everything's better and they don't have to go through getting a referral later or something like that. They can just go back to work. And the teacher can go back to work and the student can go back to the class. We did hall monitoring, which we still do now. We did do those things in the lunchroom where we would do extra supervision. It was more of a cross between like if it's a call for an administrator, we would go to it if the administrators are busy. And then if the counselors are busy, because most of the time students have scheduled appointments, we will be easier access to get to those students and be able to work with students one-on-one. That was what we started with. And the safety part is if we had a situation in a school, then we would go and assist with the situation. That was how we started. The youth advisor role now has also just expanded to what we have on the screen, which is provided caseload management for students under a pre-expulsion contract. The goal is to reduce the amount of students who reoffend in an effort to decrease exclusionary disciplinary actions. And what we did, one of the things we do now is use the panoramic to track groups, the pre-exposure groups that we work with. Right now, I work with a caseload of 18 students, just to give an example. And we work with the monitoring tracking system that Melvin Johnson will show you right now. So we go through this process with the students weekly. I have a schedule of students that I work with on different days throughout the week, once a week, and we come in and they ask things about like, do they need an academic goal set or do they need an attendance plan set? Because the main things we're working on is getting students to school every day or getting students back on track to where they come to school more often. And we're trying to bring up their grades because we know that if they're there in the building daily, most likely their grades are going to be better than if we can't get them to the school. So we work on those things. And I'll just say that when we have the meetings with the students, it's a one-on-one meeting that I have with each individual. I just try to encourage open communication. I talk to the student about these things, teaching them problem-solving skills, and emphasize the importance of learning from their mistakes and positive reinforcement for improved behavior. So when we talk to the students, I'll ask the student, what was their pre-exposure for? They'll tell me, and then I'll ask them, well, what did you learn from it? They'll let me know things that they learned from it, and we'll just circle that in, and those will be the things that we start with each week. Every time I talk to them, I'm like, hey, what did you do this week to not get back into that same trouble or fall back into that loop again? And they'll tell me what it is. So with the additional help of the panorama training that we took at the beginning of the school year with Mr. Johnson, we're able to see accurate attendance and grades. So when we have the meetings, we can talk to them right away and look right into the system and see exactly the breakdown of their grades and their attendance right away. We don't have to wait for it. We can look at it one-on-one right inside the meeting. And so it's easy to check. I'll ask them, hey, it looked like you missed 2 days. What's wrong? I was sick. Okay, so then with the tracking system that we have, we'll set a goal that next week we won't miss these 2 days. Or if you were missing 2 days, did you get those days excused? Making sure that a parent called in to excuse you for those days. And also, if you do miss, can we go home and get these assignments done still so that you are still logged into the system and getting things completed? And they'll do that. So after we get the information log, we're able to meet with the counselor to work on academic plans and or attendance goals, depending on what it is for the upcoming week. We have been able to keep open communication with the students. That allows the students to feel like they have someone in the building they have a connection with or they can trust. Out of the 18 students that I've been working with this year, only 2 or 3 have been seen in the office for being in trouble, and they were seen, not suspended. So that's the numbers that we have for working with students just from us starting the caseload this year. We try to talk to students about things that they can do differently in the building. If it's just like not playing so much, because sometimes I talk to students and they're like, I'm just playing, or I was just having a moment and like I didn't think that would get me in trouble. A lot of times that's really what it is. Students do things and they don't think that they're going to get into the trouble that they get into, or they're influenced by their friends. So once we talk to them and then we're like, hey, but do you see how this could be unsafe? Or do you understand the school environment and you see how this could get you in trouble? When they realize it, they're like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Like if I'm like, you running down the hall and you knock somebody over and they hit their head and then that student is injured, and then you get in trouble for that. We know that when you were running down the hall chasing after that person, you weren't trying to intentionally hurt somebody that was an innocent bystander in the situation. But these things can happen because of the way that the building is or how many students we have in there. They're like, oh yeah, you're right. I never thought of it like that, because they're just caught up in the moment. And so when we talk to them about those type of things, they kind of start to come up and tell me, like, they'll see me and be like, hey, my friends were playing. I told them, chill out. I don't want to play today. Like, are we just going to chill, or we wait till our different time of our practice? And I'm like, right, that's good. Like, so I think some of the things that we do is just like reiterating everything and getting those students to understand. And so far it's been working. And also students will come up to me when it's not their time to meet and just let me know things that they want to go over. And it seems to be working a lot better with us adding on that system for the youth advisors, the pre-exposure system.
I just wanted to chime in, and then I'll actually pause and allow any board members to ask questions of Mr. Wade. That's okay. When I was visiting last March and April, I made a comment to several people that I liked the youth advisor title. I love that title, right? But I thought that we could use them in a different kind of way. I looked at these gentlemen and I said they remind me of bouncers. Okay. If anybody's been to the club, it's been a long time for me, but they're intimidating forces, right? At the door. And I said I wanted to kind of change that role from a bouncer to a bartender. I want somebody who's providing a service. And that's the main thing that we have to work with our kids, is to provide them a service. And what I heard from Mr. Wade talking is that he's really providing more of a service for students to interact with them and to try to help them individually, not as necessarily as a group. Right? Kids they have individual issues, and they need someone who can really address those concerns. And so I appreciate that. I'm going to pause and allow any board members, if you have any questions of Mr. Wade, to Mr. Johnson, so far. Yeah.
Thanks for coming up, guys. I appreciate all the information. I love seeing this form too. My question on the form is, I see like it's a really great question. Like what is making kids struggle to make it to school or all the classes? And they're all really good, categories. But I wonder, I don't see that there's anything about external, like nothing in the environment, the neighborhood, home. Is that a deliberate choice, or is that just something that falls outside of the scope of?
Yeah, well, we know that there are sometimes we get that information on the backside, and my kids aren't always open to talk about the types of issues that are occurring at the household. And I think that's the point, that developing those critical relationships with students that Wade has the opportunity to do. You'll see more students then beginning to open up and being able to talk about, the home life being somewhat of an impediment, right? So, they might not be open to say that I'm babysitting, right? Because they may be afraid of the consequences of that. Like, you can't be babysitting your 5-year-old brother or sister. You're supposed to be in school. So only when those like critical relationships are developed and that trust is developed, do we see students beginning to like open and share about some of those issues. But we do certainly know that those external factors are occurring.
Yeah. I figured that wouldn't be news for you guys.
Yeah.
I was just curious about the angle on it.
Well, to add to that, those are the things that the student wants. The more I meet with a student, they'll tell me those type of things, and those are the things that I'll ask them if it's okay if I talk with a counselor about it. And once we talk to the counselor, then we'll relay the message back to Mr. Johnson, and then we'll go forward with those type of things, because sometimes I have to reach out to parents and talk to them, and then they'll explain things that go on at their home too, just depending on the relationship that I build with talking to parents from being around their students. And they'll tell us different things that go on, and then we're able to share that and then try to work on it from there. So, but a lot of students, when they see those type of questions on a form, they kind of back away, or they'll be like, I'm not answering this. I don't want to say anything about this. So we get that a lot from students. So try to make it more general to the things that we know that the students will respond to.
Great. I appreciate the content.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Second.
I just want to thank your team and everybody that was on that committee, because the direction that our youth advisors are going now is the way it should be. We're going to be able to help a lot more students than by you guys doing hall sweeps and any of that. You get to build a relationship with the kids. It's super.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yep. Yes.
So you said that you had about 18 kids on your caseload, but do you interact with just anybody in the building? And let's say that, somebody is roaming the hallway and needs some guidance. Do you step in?
Yes, I talk to every student in the building. I pretty much know all the students by name. So, and I know the students from the summer working at the summer program and meeting the students at the park. So, being at different schools, I know all the students from middle school all the way up, some from elementary, from summer school, being at the parks. So when they come to the high school, it's a familiar face. And I talk to students. I sometimes see students that are just going to the bathroom, and I'll be like, "Hey, where you headed?" And they'll be like, showing me they pass really fast. And I'm like, no, I'm just asking where you headed. Or I'm like, how you doing? And they're like, here's my pass. I'm like, I'm saying hi, like, the way, who are you? And they'll be like, oh, well, I thought I was in trouble. I'm like, I don't just eat the students that are in trouble. Like, you're a good student, I still want to meet you too, because
Right.
we don't really get a chance to recognize the students that do good. So I
Right.
kind of have a relationship with everybody.
Nice.
And when I see a troubled student in a hall, of course I'll step in. That's just natural for me anyways. I came from the Runner Rebels program, which was a mentoring program since I was like 14 years old. And so that's just a natural instinct to talk and stop students when they are in trouble times. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we
And that's what that proactive piece is. So I'm glad to hear that.
for sure.
Okay. So, oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sickich kind of stole mine because you guys were at the workshop last year coming in and talking about this, where our roles were for our youth advisors, and I am also really glad to see that we're shifting at. One of the things that I seem to remember hearing was that there was some communication concerns about, the roles that you took on and the teachers and the administration within the building understanding that. Has that, with this reimagining, has that been shifted so that everyone is on board and you can be more proactive even with the teachers about what's going on with their students if you know that student is going or having trouble in that class?
Yeah, Mr. Johnson comes over once a week to meet with me and talk to me, and then he relays the message to the administrators in the building. And so when he lets them know that this is the new thing that we have to focus on, that's the number one priority. Then the administrators do a good job of letting the staff know that. They'll just be like, this is what Wade is doing and this is what we have to do. And so like they've been pretty receptive to it. So like we haven't had any issues since we started doing it this way. Yeah.
Cool. And I had one more question with this. Since you are providing caseload management and you're working with these students, are you then also acting as like advocates if they have a meeting with a principal or vice principal, if there's a concern that their behavior is out of line? Because you said that, they're meeting with them, but are you involved with that at all? Because, I would imagine sometimes if these kids are feeling a little bit triggered, it's easier for someone else to kind of speak with and for them rather than allow that triggering to continue.
Yeah, they meet with me, and like they'll call me into a meeting or they'll say, hey, you've been working with this student for how long? What's going on with that? Like, how is the student reacting? Do you feel like the students get better? Do they still seem triggered for the things that bothered them before? And I'll explain to them. And then sometimes I don't have to go in with the meeting per se, but they'll have a different understanding. And if they were just going in there and talking to the student one-on-one, they'll be like, okay, this student has been doing good. I'll show them a breakdown because I'll write down the things we talk about in the meetings, and then I'll work on those things with that student. So I'll tell them this is what we've been working on so far. And they'll be like, okay, and they'll let it handle that way. Or if they feel like it's a situation where the student was just acting out, and needed somebody, then they'll call me into the meeting. They do a good job of making sure that I'm involved now, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Because I know we're gonna move on to other parts of the presentation, so I just wanted to give an opportunity to thank Mr. Wade for his staying in our district, because consistency, as we know, is so incredibly important for students to learn, but I also think it's really important in the youth advisor position. When I first heard of youth advisors, the advisor part of the title is the part that I was thinking about, that they would be the person that would be able to recognize that child and be able to know that child, know their situation, be a trusted person they could come to, or where they maybe wouldn't be trusting other people in the building for one reason or another. So I really appreciate your longevity in our district here and the wealth of knowledge that you bring to the position, and to be able to help and mentor other youth advisors as they come in as well. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I'm glad to see that we're continuing to move this more towards youth advisor title as I see it. And I think that we're going to see good gains from that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you get.
No, because I'm gonna move on. All right, thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, good guy, man. Good guy.
I'm all right.
Yeah. So Mr. Wade, he does represent that proactive part of the work that we're doing with our students and trying to do our very best to ensure that we don't see high incidents of students who are experiencing like school separation and exclusionary disciplinary action. So the role that he plays and the value that he brings to our school, namely Nathan Hill, is invaluable, and I have a strong appreciation for all of our youth advisors and the work that we're doing. And I just, so that we know, this is just baseline for us, right? So there's still work to be done, but I'm really proud and excited about the work that we have been able to get to complete thus far. So moving on to we've kind of addressed the proactive pieces, but now we need to address like what happens when there's a breakdown. And so incidents occur at our school, as we already know. And then we need to have some school separation, and there's an intake process for the tech program. And what we did in terms of the tech program, and I'll show you this in the graph, is like kind of reimagine this entire process. Everything from removing the autonomy from the hands of an individual to, again, putting in systems of checks and balances and make sure that fairness, equity, and consistency reigns true across the board. So we're not going to see a difference between the type of disciplinary action taken at Central than would be taken at Nathan Hill. And I think that has been extremely important for us. Along with that, I think we also needed to make sure once we got a student in our program, they're not there just to languish. Like, we still need to make sure that we're providing the academic support for our students, because again, students aren't designed to graduate from the tech program. We're there to put some supports in place for them, provide an academic space for them to get some individualized support, but ultimately to reintegrate them back into those comprehensive spaces. And the last thing we want to do is send them back credit deficient. Otherwise, we become part of the problem. So we had to like kind of think like we have to be serious and intentional about having a plan for our students when they come to us. And we'll talk about that briefly. And so a part of that was also addressing the social emotional supports that our students need and require when they come see us. Mainly because there's antisocial behaviors that brought them to us to begin with, right? So if we're not addressing those, then all we're doing is holding them there to send them back to reoffend at some later date, because we haven't addressed those fundamental needs that might have existed in with those young people. So that's why the SEL piece is super important. And so again, we have this flow chart that I'll show you. Again, that's an internal document. It's gone through several iterations. We did some professional development with our secondary principals. They gave feedback, and then we finally kind of landed on a process for all secondary principals. And what this flow chart what you'll see is it does provide a sequential step-by-step process that each principal will take when there is a serious offense that are occurring at the school. And when we say serious, there's the fighting, there's the sexual misconduct, there's the possession and distribution, those types of real serious incident that requires some school separation for a period of time. Again, that's that checks and balance system that we'll talk about what that looks like in a second, but I want you all to act like this makes sense. All right. Yeah, it's an internal document, but pretend like this makes perfect sense. But this is something that we developed and designed, again, going through several iterations, and I'll give you a condensed version of what this is. And this was designed for us, our secondary principals, but this is the condensed version of that flow chart. So let's say a major incident occur at one of our comprehensive spaces. The principal will consult, because we're talking about secondary mainly, right? The principal will consult Jody Landish, who is their principal coach, and they will make a recommendation. The principal and Jody Landish will make a recommendation whether or not this incident requires a change of placement, right? They will then take that recommendation and they'll contact Director of Student Services, Laura Sage, and myself, Manager of Student Connections, with their recommendation. Laura and I, we look at the incident. Now, what we're doing is obviously we're referring to our Students' Rights and Responsibility Handbook because it is our guide. We're also looking at historically how we've addressed these issues. And then we will make a determination, a decision, and say, yes, this looks like it warrants a change of placement, board know this seems like something that can be school managed, and then we'll give the principal some supports in terms of ideas that they can use at the school level to address those issues. If we sustain the recommendation, then we will decide the duration of the change of placement. And now this is critically different from years past because there's been incidents where a student might have been with us for close to a year, right? And we've really looked at that piece. And I don't know if you're familiar, but we have had a couple of our intermediate students come to us. We will not keep an intermediate student longer than a quarter, right? While we're providing the academic supports and the social emotional supports for them. We think like a single quarter and sometimes not even a full quarter is enough time to provide those supports because we need to get them back in school in those spaces where they can get that support that they actually need. This in cases where we might think that an incident will warrant an expulsion. Dr. Robinson is involved in that conversation. And then again, we meet as a team, as a full collective, and make a determination on whether or not the incident rises to the level of an expulsion, or if this is just a change of placement for a period of time, or if students should return back to their home school. If in the case where we've decided there's a change of placement, there's an intake meeting that occurs. At the same time, now this is where it becomes important for us because what we've seen in the past is students come to us and there is no education plan developed for them, right? So once we make a determination that a student will be with us for a period of time, the deeper learning coach and/or the school counselor will develop an education plan, right? Because most of the stuff that we're doing is on a computer. It'll say, hey, this kid is working on this program, so on and so forth. And then at the end, you'll see it'll indicate what type of social emotional supports they're already seeing. Or like, for instance, we have kids who are already seeing someone from PSG, or what's the other one called? That's well, thank you. I forget it. So if they're seeing that, then that information is shared with us so that we can continue with those services as well. But the ed plan will also indicate the types of social emotional supports that student is required. At that intake meeting, the parent is there, the student is there, the building administrator is there, the tech program team is there, and we're all going over expectations. We're going over rules, procedures. We're talking about the design of the day, how we expect for them to maintain a credit load and complete coursework. But ultimately, the decision is that what we're talking about is how you're going to be able to be reintegrated back into your home school. So that's that flow chart in a nutshell. Again, as we state, the academic support is not the end all be all for us. We have to address the social emotional supports for our young people in the program. And so let Mr. Ryan talk about Mr. Lohberger. I call him Ryan Lohberger. I'll let Mr. Lohberger talk about what that SEL support looks like for our students when they join us.
Okay, I'm Ryan Lohberger. I spent the last 10 years at Hale as a special education teacher. This is my first year at Tech. So we're kind of starting over from the beginning. So I think Mr. Johnson covered most of the education plans.
Yeah.
So the deeper learning coach, what they do when they're developing the education plans is they talk to the student teachers, figure out what topics or units they've covered so far in that semester. And then they put together a plan on our online platforms. We have a few different ones that we use that coincide with units that are going to be coming up for the rest of the semester. So then they send that plan along with a plan that they come up with the counselors to figure out, like, what does this kid need to work on when they're over at Tech. So then that's where, I come in and the counselors come in. The counselors come and visit the students from each high school, middle school each week.
And they work on programs like Teen Intervene, Botfin, and we could also refer them to the PSG. And then so they work in small groups on those, just getting, skills that they're lacking with the counselor. You can flip to the next one. So here's what the education plan looks like. It's just kind of like, here's what they need to take while they're over at Tech. So what's cool about like this is each kid's different. So like I can individualize it. Like some kids are really good at like multitasking and doing a bunch of different stuff. So I know how long they're going to be with me. I know what credits they need to get while they're there. But nobody has to tell me or the kid when to do whatever. So we can, if a kid really wants to focus on one class and like just focus on that class, knock it out, and then move to the next class, move to the next class. Some kids, that's how they work. And that's how we do it. I can set it up that way. But because I never want to get them to the point where they feel overwhelmed while they're at Tech. I want them to be successful while they're with me, because that will help get them back to school faster.
Yep. So that's it. You see and I hope that you all could see this. Included in there is that social emotional support that's identified in there, that both Mr. Lohberger and Mr. Jenkins are working with our young people, doing small group work with them as well. You'll see this piece with our young people as they come in. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar what the circle looks like and the purpose of a circle. Well, they have what they call a family table circle. So every time a new student is introduced to the program, they all will convene to family table circle, and they'll talk about those pieces around, like creating norms of what the circle look like. What are the expectations? What do we want to come out of this circle? They'll talk about some of the decision making that young people engage in, the risk behavior. So some of the stuff is like high risk conversations that they'll engage in. And with the purpose of it being for them to be transparent and honest, because a lot of times those are some shared experiences and they can learn from each other with the guidance of the adults in the room with them. So I think that's been a pretty good piece for us. Also, along in terms of our SEL supports with our young people, we do engage with empathy interviews with our students, the one-on-one types of empathy interviews. Again, this is only after you've kind of developed the sort of trust capital that's necessary to hear some of those more personable issues that occur with young people. So we know that like investing that one-on-one time and demonstrating through our actions how much we care about our young people, that trust capital is developed and shared with us. And we're able to take the information from that to provide better supports for our young people. So the empathy interview plays a very critical role for us. We also do mindfulness in our classroom. So students are doing breathing techniques. Sometimes I'll come there, I'm from a building and they're gone. And I'm like, where are the kids? Well, they took a walk, right? And they're just did a quick walk around the building, and they're observing the environment around them. They're getting fresh air, and they're able to come back and talk about and debrief. So they engage with this mindfulness as well. And I think this is a real big piece, a real big component for our young people that we've adopted in our classroom, is a piece that we'll call critical media literacy. So students are looking at documentaries that are pertinent to some of the issues that they are dealing with on a regular basis, whether that be drug usage and the types of long-term effect of that, and the decision making and how that can lead you down a trajectory that is difficult to return from. So they're engaging in critical media literacy through the reviews of documentaries. They're listening to music, right? And it's just an opportunity to meet our young people where they are, and using youth culture as a springboard to talk about some of those critical issues that occur. And so that SEL has been embedded in everything that we do with our young people. And we'll get to the part where we'll talk about our numbers and what that looked like. But right now, I know Dr. Robinson
Can I
wants
just add
to,
one thing?
yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to be frank. We at Tech, me and Mr. Jenkins, who I wish he was here, we're all about establishing community. And having the kids watch out for each other, take responsibility for each other, have social responsibility for each kid's success, not just their own. What are you doing to help the school? And how are you holding yourself accountable for what you do? That's what we focus on in class.
Yeah.
Ms. Carr?
Did you say that you would share numbers? I would like to know how many kids are currently in the tech program?
Yeah.
Gene.
So
That's next.
yeah, at the end, we'll do what we call a sneak peek of the numbers. We'll talk about
Okay.
like the
That's what you said.
yeah. So we have a student who's here tonight, and just to kind of before he starts, I just want to kind of introduce him in a way of how I met him. I'm coming into the office one morning, I'm going up the elevator, and I knew why he was here, but he didn't know who I was. So I started a conversation with him, asking who he was and why was he here. And he told me, he said, he did something stupid, and he said, but I'm really trying, and I'm going to get out of here. This is what he told me. He said, I'm going to get out of here. I'm not going to do what I did to get here. I've learned from my mistake, and I'm working the program. And I said, are you working the program? I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I'm earning credits. And he says, I'm on part to graduate with my class. And I was blown away. I was blown away. And I said, well, I just want to let you know I am the superintendent of district. And he said, oh, like he had no idea. It's like, wow. And so I made a promise to him though. I said, I'm going to check on you. Every time I'm here on the 6th floor, I'm going to come check on him. Now, I think I've lived up to that. I check in as much as I can with him. And I ask Mr. Johnson, how's Kane? How's Kane? How's he doing? Is he working it? Is he working it? And we're so proud of him. And we thought it was a good time to bring it and allow him to just quickly tell his story and the impact this program has had on him, this redesign has had on him. I want to thank his parents for allowing him to speak to us tonight. It takes courage to do what he's about to do. And thank you again for allowing him to do that. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to turn it over to Kane. Kane, you're the star right now. Go ahead.
My name is Kane. I'm 16 years old. I'm in the 10th grade. I've been in the tech program for 3 semesters now. When I first began the program, I wasn't motivated or engaged with completing any schoolwork. I'd come into class, sit in silence with little to no support from the teacher. But this year, with Mr. Lohberger, Mr. Jenkins, and Mr. Johnson, they made me really find who I am and why I'm here and what I have to change to get back to school. They helped me understand everything that I need to know. They helped me realize that the way I got here was the way people should know me as. They helped me develop my work ethic by giving me the motivation to get my credits back so I can go back to Nathan Hale as fast as possible. And I'm on the road for it. My plans and goals for when I go back to Nathan Hale this fall is to speak to my counselor to get back into welding so I can prepare my future in welding and possibly becoming a mechanic. I want to go back and show everyone that remembers me, the new me, and show them that I'm a whole new person and the past doesn't define who I am now. My advice for kids that are in the tech program that want to be successful would be to find a good spot to avoid any distractions so you can get as much work done as fast as possible. I would say do not be scared to ask for help. The teachers will gladly help you and they will show you the best and easiest way to complete your work. I just want to say thank you to my family for believing in me and the team at Tech that helped me realize my purpose.
All right.
I don't think, there's a dry eye up here
Yeah.
internally now. Some of us are we're a little manly, so we try to hold it in. But I mean, you're jerking the tears out of my eyes right now. To hear that, because I think what you expressed to us is the true essence of this work. And how we are determined to make sure that all of our students are successful. So I'm gonna allow for sorry, take your time. Any questions?
Any questions for Kane?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say that that was very powerful. I'm so excited for you. I work on an inpatient unit with kids and I see them struggling, and it's so wonderful when I see like that you're connecting with your teachers, and it's just great to see like just how you have this renewed energy for like your studies and you have a goal. And I'm just like so excited for you, and I'm just really happy that that you feel like you're being supported now and that we can help you get to that goal. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Carr?
Well, Kane, I just was wondering if you might make the same promise that Dr. Robbins had made. Will you check in with us? Will you give us, can we see you again in a little while? I'd love to have an update on you and watch you as through graduation and even after. I think that you'd be such an inspiration. So if you feel like it,
Yeah,
just come and see us or give us an update.
Mr. Johnson was saying that he'd like for me to come back and speak to the kids and show them that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You don't always have to go through a dark time and not just get expelled from school and don't think you have a way to go back.
Beautiful.
Super.
Ms. Lee?
I just have to say it's great to meet you because a few months ago when Ms. Kaiser and I had actually approached Dr. Robinson about having a workshop on tech just for our own benefit, just to understand it more and stuff, because I didn't completely understand how it worked and just all that kind of stuff. And it kind of led to all these other things. And he actually had talked to me about this kid that he met and how he was just wowed by him and the motivation and everything. That it is a pleasure to meet you because it warmed my heart then. And I had no idea who you were. So to meet you now is even better. And even if you don't check in, I'm going to be watching for you because I have 2 more still at Hale. So I'm going to be looking for you back there. So fair warning.
Sure.
I'll be watching for you. I'm very excited for you. I think your story is amazing. And I hope that you can share it with kids for years to come. And even to those kids in the intermediate schools, because, unfortunately, there's kids far younger that could use that,
Yeah.
Instead of waiting until they get older. That, I think your story is extremely powerful. And I thank you so much for having, the guts to come up here and talk about it, because that's not easy to do. So just that in itself shows how much you've grown.
Thank you.
So, and thank you, Mom and Dad, very much.
Mhm.
And everybody over at Tech, because that is a true testament to what you guys are doing over there.
Right.
So thank you.
Right.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you for being here, and I think it's awesome that you have been able to take the step to share with us, because it's really hard coming up and talking parents and us and everything. So I really appreciate it. What I wanted to ask you is not so much looking back, but looking forward. Your goal is to be back at Hale, and I guess I had kind of 2 questions for you. One, what do you think the biggest skill that you're taking from tech is that is going to help you make sure that happens and you stay successful at Hale? And then the other question with that is kind of similar, because I think we're hearing it from everyone, is you've taken a step to be in a leadership role. And so now, do you have any idea how you're going to use that once you go back?
One thing that I am gonna take back when I do go back to Hale is always own up to your whatever you do wrong, always own up to it, take responsibility for it, and just never try to put anybody down. Just always, because every time we walk into the classroom, Mr. Jenkins is always there. He's always bringing up our day. Like, he's always asking us how our day is, how everything is. And every time we talk about it, he's always like, you just brought my number up by like 5 points. So I always think like, if someone's having a bad day, always just talk to them and try to brighten their day up a little bit more. And what was the second question again?
No leadership for you, but I think you might have touched on it. Like, what do you plan to do with this?
So one thing I have done at the tech program this year is when new kids come in to tech and I see that they're not on topic as hard, I always tend to like show them that like you should do the work, like you're here for a reason, like this is a big step back, like you're not in so many classes. This is the time, you're here for 2 hours a day, you should do the work as much as you can. Like there's no point in just sitting here and doing nothing for 2 hours. You can at least get a little bit of work done every time. Yeah.
All right. Well, and thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I'm personally really happy to hear that these changes that have been implemented and will be implemented in tech moving forward have worked for you and hopefully will work for others, because obviously our goal as a board is to educate every single student in our district to graduation so they can do what they want to do when they're done. So you can't do that if you're not in school. You can't do that if you don't get your credits. And so I'm glad you found your motivation. And I definitely encourage you to share that with others as you move forward in your life. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my guy, Kenny. I love that kid. He's you'll never walk into the tech program and see a frown on his face. And he's the one that's like that inspiration for all of us when we come into that room. So he's a bright star. And again, it just reinforces for all of us that, you know, none of our kids are disposable. The easiest thing would have been to give up on that kid, right? But there's redemption in so many of our young people. And again, the onus is on us to mine for that. I believe there's something that's innate in all of our young people. And, you know, we just have to mine for that. And look at this diamond that came from that mine, and I appreciate it so much. But I'm not gonna get hyper emotional because yeah, my machismo gotta kick in. But I told you all that we'll do a sneak peek at the numbers, and I just want to share this with you. As you all know that based on like, you know, some of the policies that we accepted and adopted last year, we had 18 students return from last year in the tech program. So we began with somewhat of a swell, right? So 18 students, I believe there were 5 or 6 of them that had been expelled that we started our school year with. Since first quarter, we added an additional 22 students to the tech program. 13 of those students have since transitioned back to their home school, and we have a couple of more students who are preparing to transition back to their home school. And this is what I'm excited about. I'm proud of this number, and I know that we can do better. But 56 courses were attained or recovered just from semester 1 during our program this year. Now, this is for us, again, this is baseline data for us, right? Because this is the first time that we're being intentional about the numbers and what we're producing and how many credits are actually being attained. Because again, we do not want to be a part of the problem at the tech program. Sending students back to their comprehensive space credit deficient allows us to be a part of that problem. So that's why we have the goal setting as a part of our regular plan. That's why we have the progress monitoring as a part of our regular plan. This is no longer a place that you are going to come to and just languish and do nothing. The communication that we're having with our students is clearer. The transparency that we have with our parents is clearer. And we do our very best to make sure our students understand what the overall objective is. So these are just some of the numbers that we're able to share with you.
Just want to break down, go back real quick.
Yes, sir.
That 22 though, that's now shorter term stuff. That's not long term. So some of them are maybe only there for a quarter and they go back to school. So I don't want us to think, oh, the numbers have actually gone up. If you want to look at that way, yes, they have gone up, but not for an extended period of time though. These are not, in the past, it's been more long-term placements versus short-term.
So if you all ask me the question, what makes this program better? As our program summary, I'll say students are no longer arbitrarily placed at the tech program for an undetermined amount of time, right? There is no principal that can contact me and say, this kid's gonna be here for the rest of the year. That's not gonna happen. We're gonna talk about what that means, what that looks like. We have a system of checks and balance in place that I believe it's working extremely well. Again, there's stronger communication between the tech program and the home school. We don't want any building principal to believe that they've just dropped some student off and then their job is done. Like they're just there. We require that our student service departments are connecting with our students on a regular basis. We already have school social workers coming over providing some of the SEL supports for our students. And just to make sure that, you know, we're clear and transparent about what that objective is. So even before we reach our transition time, like 2 weeks before the quarter, we're in contact with the school and saying, hey, the student is coming back. Do you have a plan in place for them? Here are some of the social emotional supports that we've been working on with this student. Here are some of their triggers. This is what we've done. So the communication is such, and then that information is actually shared with Mr. Wade, the youth advisor. And so Wade know as he is receiving these kids returning from tech exactly the type of work that we're doing. And then he continues that work in terms of the progress monitoring and providing the supports to one-on-one. And he serves as somewhat of a conduit or a liaison between the student and student services. Course completion, we believe that we're in a space where kids are completing their courses. They're completing the coursework, right? We've put a strategy in place to make sure that students are aware of that. Again, that comes along with effective communication with the student, with student services, and with the parents, right? So the students are with us for an abbreviated time. They're with us physically for an abbreviated time of the day. When they go home, the onus is on them to complete more schoolwork. If they are to complete work at the rate of their cohort peers back at their comprehensive space, then we know that they have to complete these courses. For instance, one course every 2.5 weeks. That will keep them on track with what their grade level peers are doing back in the comprehensive spaces. So we're monitoring that and making sure students are doing their very best to complete those courses. As we talked ad nauseum, the social emotional supports are embedded in our program, right? It's a part of the day-to-day from Mr. Jenkins asking students how they're doing, from the school social workers coming in, providing the bottom life skill training and the SBIRT training and all of those pieces, the family table circle time that the kids are engaging in, all of that is a part of our school day. And I believe the biggest part for us as the adults of the program is that we have a strong commitment to examining our own deficits and improving the program so that we can improve student outcomes. And I'm excited about the work that we have been able to do so far, but I know that there's a lot of work still yet to be done. But I believe we are on that proper trajectory. And I leave you all with that same phrase, Kasarian and Guerra are our children. This is our North Star because none of us can possibly be doing better than our kids. Thank you.
Thank you
you.
for coming.
Any additional questions for the board? I have a couple.
Yes.
One measure that I would be really interested in knowing now that we're looking at baseline data is your recidivism rate. So what we've put in place, how is it working? Are we, when we send students back, are they staying on track?
Good question. I'll say, of all the students that we've returned, we had one student that committed an act that led to a significant disciplinary action. But that's just the one student, and we took that one on the chin. That's not something that we're proud of. So again, to the point around examining our own practices and what we do in the program. Again, the student and the parent has to take some responsibility, but for us, we know that we need what we need to do. So it provided us an opportunity to sort of calibrate some of the things that we did around our decision making, turning that student to that home school. But of all the students that we've returned, we've had one student reoffend.
So, but what he speaks of is, when this incident occurred with this student reoffending in a sense, we felt like we had to put in sort of measures and checkpoints to make sure before we return students. In other words, they have to meet certain things. And we feel like by doing that, we really are sort of like setting the bar higher, versus just saying, okay, they get their time, they can go back. But if they're doing their time, but they still have to do certain things within that time period in order to be successful.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not expecting like 100%, like no one ever, I mean, you only can do so much. Like you said, parents, the student, they have to buy in, they have to do the work, they have to continue that work. And so I don't want you to think that, oh, well, if you don't get 100%, then you're not doing it right. No. Really, for me, it's called comparison, before versus after, as far as changes go. And obviously, it's a continually evolving process. As you realize that, oh, we missed that there, we could do something different there. Great, but it's not a one size fits all. We don't have for students. And so I was just for like moving forward as we go through the years of doing this, I think looking at that rate and saying like, oh yeah, we were here, now we're down to here because we have these processes and procedures that we're going through to make sure that when we return a student to their home school, they're more likely than not to be successful within that position. So that was all that really I was
Absolutely.
getting. So no worries there from my perspective.
And can I just mention, when you have a program like this, like it's ongoing, for however, every year, every situation, we take a look, we examine what went well, what do we need to keep moving, growing, shifting, changing. So, it's not so much of a like did wrong versus we learned too.
And my other point was really about, because they kind of go together, what are your indicators of success of the program and goal setting for that? So again, we're looking at data now, we're looking at numbers, how many students we have, how many credits we get. So I think thinking about what would be a goal or goals for the program, and then what are those indicators of success for the program as well. So those are all the things that I would just mention now that we're collecting this data, which I'm sure some of it was probably collected before, but not at this level. And so I like data. Data is great. And I think it informs the processes and procedures that are being used. You see what works, you see what doesn't work, and then what other things that might be needed to try and make the program even more successful. Obviously, we'd love to have 0 students at Tech, I don't want to get you out of a job or nothing, but obviously we'd rather have 0 students.
I say it all the time. I want to put them out of business. All the time.
All the time.
I would also like to say though, that I think you're providing a service that is very important for a lot of our students. As someone who works with kids who have significant behavioral issues or mental health issues, I think that this is a program that is I think this is a really good program for some of our kids who really do need that extra, support doing that goal setting and then figuring out like, how am I going to go back to my high school and be able to implement some of these active coping skills while I'm there. So I think it's a good program.
Thank you.
I just had a conversation with one of the students the other day who essentially was saying, I don't want to leave Tech. So the conversation that we had was, what is it about Tech that's working for you? And how can we work together with the school that you're going to be returning to create that space so that you feel that same way about what's happening here.
Mr. Burns?
I just have.
Mostly, go ahead.
So one of the things that, as I was thinking and hearing your whole presentation, you have your intake process, but that transition back into school. I think as I'm seeing this, I'd like to see more on that. Just because you said, all right, we have a phone call, so this student's coming back. What is your plan? I'd really like it to be, what is our plan? And, you know, this student has been going, as you said, 2 hours a day for a long time. Do we do phased reentries? Do they still come back to tech for some of the social emotional stuff? And that's part of their plan. Like, I'd like to see that we're supporting them on both ends, maybe a little more well-defined. But I hear that it's the stuff, and maybe it's just not the focus for tonight, but I think that is going to do wonders for our students, like with the conversation you had, or for our student that was here talking tonight, so that they feel like they are safe and that they can enter, because it's going to be, if they've done what this program is set out to do, they're different people than they were. They may not necessarily know how to juggle that right off the bat. So I think a little more with that transition. And
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That I don't think we talked about tonight, but I will say this to you. You just think about what Mr. Wade talked about, all of the things he's doing on the front end. When the kid returns, that kid's still getting those things on the back end as well.
And
but I
with
agree.
Mr. Wade is fine. I think it's more as with the principals and the school in general, and then that we kind of understand that they might need a little more flexibility. So.
No, and I think that's a good point. I don't think we did a good enough job in talking about what the reintegration plan looks like, right? So there is a reintegration plan. There's a reintegration meeting for our students as they're going back, where that information is shared. And we do have a couple of students who went back to their comprehensive space on an abbreviated schedule, right? So if you've been out for a while, you have to build that stamina up again of being in your space for 7 hours a day, 7+ hours a day. So we've had students who return on an abbreviated schedule. We're talking about what supports they need when they return to that school. So yeah, and I know that we can still do some things to bolster that piece, but there are some structures in place for reintegration. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess his focus is more on the intermediate level. I don't know, like, of the students that are at tech, as far as how many are at the intermediate age and grades versus the high school. But I know you had made that comment, like with intermediate, not wanting them there for more than a quarter at the absolute most. So I guess a question I would have is, what are your thoughts as far as that goes? And then I guess as a parent who has a child at that intermediate age in high school, as I kind of look at it and go, oh, I don't know, because I look at that intermediate age and I feel like that is such a fragile age that I'm kind of like, well, if they're going through such hard things, why only a quarter? Because that might be that pivotal moment where I'm going, well, that might be just that perfect time to get them in there if that's what they need. You know what I mean? Just with talking to my daughter and some of the things that have gone on with friends of hers and stuff like that at that age, that I'm just wondering what the thought process is behind that as far as that age group in particular.
Sure. So when we talk about our intermediate students, we're talking about students basically from the age of 11 to 13 years old. We know that those kids are going to need those foundational skills before they can enter high school. Again, this is all about how are we doing our very best to set them up for success. Right now, they sometimes will make some critical mistakes and decisions that'll lead them there, and that's why we're providing those additional supports for those young people. Now, it's brain development and brain functioning, their ability to understand and appreciate some of the issues and the concerns that have occurred is a little different. And we also understand that the school has far more supports than we do here at the tech program, right? So when we have our intermediate students with us, we are then even more intentional about communicating with the homeschool around what supports are you putting in place for this kid? What safety plans are you putting in place for this student when they return, right? Because an 11-year-old with us for a full semester, missing out on those social pieces, missing out on some of those really foundational, fundamental skills that they're going to need in order to be successful at the high school level, we feel is important. Like, so 9 weeks is a long time to be with us, right? And I think we're able to address some of those needs and start that work, but we're just beginning the work. They're going to be at those at FLW. They're going to be at West for a longer period of time with far more resources there. So that's why the communication between the tech program and the homeschool, specifically for the intermediate schools, is important. And that's why we have them coming in and sharing with those young people and talking about what's it going to look like when they return. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank you for coming and giving this presentation. I want to thank your staff and Mr. Wade again for Youth Advisor to come and talk to us, and obviously Kane as well.
Yep.
At my time on the board, I've never had a presentation on tech. And this is my more than 7 years now. So it's good to get a good overview of it, where we were, where we're going. And I'm looking forward to getting updates on that, how we're doing on that, how you feel. And I hope that if you feel that there's more things that you could use in tech that you think would help that program, that you ask for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this guy right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we want to give you as many tools as you need to be able to get the.
So as you mentioned resources, the youth advisor role, we're trying to budget for that for next year. So we're trying to have one in every single secondary school next year, along with the same line of supports. So right now, FLW doesn't have one.
Right.
Okay, so that's something that we are budgeting for. I don't know if Aaron is still in here. No. But I've already told him, build it like we need it. So, yeah, so I appreciate the resources.
So thank you so much. And I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
Moving in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.